types of emerging trends that we are seeing. We are seeing research and development facilities including artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, cybersecurity, cloud-based services as research and development. Well, we are seeing a trend in biotech companies, which includes medicine and pharmaceuticals, genomics, product and food and chemical production. And these are the trends that we're seeing in biotechnology. We are also seeing a trend in financial tech companies as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, a significant increase in the dependency in the banking and financial payment options, such as digital loans, e-commerce payment platforms, mobile banking, and digital technology is more relevant than ever. And those examples would be cloud-based infrastructure, hardware, servers, network components, and companies like PayPal, Square, Venmo, and Zelle would be an example. In our last discussion, we discussed potentially allowing these types of uses and considering these uses in the commercial and manufacturing zones. So we took a look at that. We see an opportunity to allow these types of uses by right, and in the office professional, C1, commercial, neighborhood commercial, general commercial, commercial manufacturing, business park, and limited manufacturing and general manufacturing. We see that we have vacant land available. We have existing underutilized buildings that are in the commercial areas. We have remote access that may be attractive for that type of company, as well as affordability. We are looking to allow these types of uses in a streamlined permitting, which makes it more attractive to come in for new business, as well as without having to provide, we have existing infrastructure without having to provide new rooftops necessarily. They could utilize existing infrastructure, existing underutilized buildings, or new development. So the graphic provided here provides an illustration of a snapshot of what we're proposing to be amended in the zoning code. The first item is electric vehicle battery storage technology. Now, I also wanted to clarify, we did provide some definition of what that might include for electric vehicle battery storage technology. It could also be not only for electric vehicle battery storage, but it could also be a general, should the commission wish to consider that. It could be electric battery storage technology in general, and that there are other types of uses that could be including long range or energy storage systems, on-site self-contained storage facilities, which provide alternative energy from the grid. Also, this is we're going to see a trend with heavy transportation in the near future. They'll be using and transitioning to electric storage components. So the first one is electric vehicle battery storage in the commercial manufacturing, business park, M1 and M2 industrial zoning districts. This could be essentially a facility that manufactures, develops. It could be, or just a location where it houses a new battery energy storage system for the storage of electric charge through the use of batteries, such as lithium ion electric vehicle batteries, which in turn provides an alternative source of power generation. And this could also be used for a variety of applications within the residential, commercial, industrial, and utility industries. However, as presented, this would be for electric vehicle battery storage battery technology we could, should the commission decide that they want to expand upon that, it could be in general, electric vehicle battery storage technology. The second item is biotechnology companies. We are proposing to allow that type of a company to be in the commercial zones, with the exception of excluding it in the office professional, but allowing that type of use to be in the C1, C2, CM, M1, and M2 zone. And then financial tech companies and research and development would be proposed across the board in the office professional and commercial and manufacturing zones. We took a look at this, and we believe this just a text amendment to our zoning code, which would be a CEQA exemption in accordance with section 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines, which only applies to projects that have the potential to not having a significant effect on the environment or a physical change. We did advertisement in the press enterprise on September 24th, and no communication has been received in favor or opposition of this proposal. It is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution with the findings included in the categorical exemption. Recommend to make a recommendation to the City Council with the proposed ordinance amendment draft. Based on the findings outlined in the staff report. We are open to answer any questions, and this concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions for staff?
I read through this. First of all, I thank you for only a 22-page packet. I felt like I needed to go read a book after this because it was so easy to read 22 pages. However, can you tell me how you decided to come up with this? Is this something that's trending in cities to do it? I'm trying to put my arms around why would we propose this? I got it what you said, that might make them it might allow them to be able to process quicker and those kind of things. I don't know about by right, but how did it come about? Tell me how, because we didn't have anything else on the agenda, and so you wanted to.
Well, we had to fill your calendar somewhere.
Had to fill our calendar somehow, but again, thank you for the smaller packet. But I'd just like to know how this came about.
Sure, let me try to address that a little bit. As you know, the city of Hemet has been experiencing some downturn in the commercial real estate. We have a lot of empty buildings, empty vacant bank buildings that are really designed to keep people and things in for security reasons. So we kind of thought about how we can reuse those buildings as we go forward. And we found that some of these businesses like the biotech and fintech or financial tech industries really like to establish themselves in somewhere that's secure, whether they're developing new technology or they want to hide their technology for now. And we found that those businesses might be very conducive to our current situation with a lot of vacant buildings. So we started to research and think about what type of businesses that can go into those areas and what type of business that can be foreseen in the future and not just what we see today. And so we started to look for different uses, and these 4 uses that we found seems to be headed in the right direction in the future, meaning that this is the trend that is happening right now. As our principal planner, Monique, stated that due to COVID-19, the increase in online banking has exponentially grown in the past 2 years. We have folks that are utilizing the phone-to-phone payment, online banking, just swiping your card next to a sensor versus actually actually using the card as we have in the past. So a lot of these technologies are happening very quickly. And rather than trying to wait until those type of businesses become a trend or that it becomes like the next hot topic, we want to be ahead of that curve. And so we decided that possibly these uses might be very beneficial for the city, as well as those property owners that have had vacant buildings for a long time. And so that's the reason why we brought this up. Some of the companies, like there were some questions and concern about the battery storage facilities. And when I initially stated this, there was some concern about we're not taking used batteries, correct? And absolutely, we're not taking used batteries. So what we're trying to provide is a new technology, a work base, a place where people can have high paying and high education surrounded jobs within the valley rather than going out somewhere else. So if we create that here and we create that opportunity at least, then we'll be able to attract some of these businesses to come into the valley, and that will really change the way our city is made up in the future.
Like, for example, on Yale in Florida, there's a old Joanne's building. What's the fabric store? In the old Comfort Zone. The real estate office is on the corner. The old Altura. Yes, in the old Altura building. But so are these type of industries looking for that? I could just call them small box users because that's what they are now. Because that was Comfort Zone was Long's Drug many years ago. And is that what we're trying to do, is look for businesses that would fill those in a, I see we've got it in commercial, we've got it in commercial manufacturing.
Correct. And so for instance, the battery storage, we wanted to make it within commercial manufacturing as the most intense or least intense zoning up to manufacturing, M2 general manufacturing, and not within the C1 or C2, which is a general commercial. So that particular type of use, like the battery storage, will not go into Joanne's type of facilities, but rather in an industrial area, more areas that are set for commercial / manufacturing. So the initial intent was for them to manufacture something in the back portion and sell it in the front portion of the building. So in those areas, it's designed and it has the layouts to have a manufacturing type use. So from those type of zoning and heavier is what we place the electric vehicles battery storage. But for financial tech or biotech companies, they could potentially go into a building that serves their square footage or the height for their storage. Financial tech, when we talk about clouds and things like that, well, cloud is not actually in the cloud. It's in somebody's building somewhere. And and for that to
looking
be
at my stuff. Are you ready? I knew it.
and for that to be secured, we felt that possibly these buildings that are created for banking industry in the past, they have security systems that are built in. They have flat spaces, high ceilings, that they can have racks of computer hardwares, those type of things that can be a secure facility for that type of use. So we're trying to figure out how you least manipulate the building or modify the building in order to have this use or the next use.
And my other, I have a couple other concerns. One is that the building areas you're talking about, many of those are built for commercial. With the sales tax that would be coming to the city. So these technologies may or may not have a commercial in the front, like you mentioned. And that I can see is taken away from that somewhat. However, I think those kind of uses are better than no uses at all for year after year after year. The other thing is the definition of it seems like maybe like in the future, somebody could come in and interpret it way different because it is so broad. And that's kind of a concern. So somebody comes in and says emerging technologies. We're gonna recreate. We're gonna build dogs and cats, and we're cloning everything in this building. And what is a definition of an emerging technology? Like my computer is taking over and showing me the weather for some reason here right now. I mean, it's just these things come up and the technologies come through, and then suddenly you have something different and everybody thinks that's a great emerging whatever. So the definition and what the future brings for those definitions that's the concern. Okay. I'm going to get ready the weather.
So just kind of expand on what you said. So we may not have particular user that comes in a commercial zone that has the tax revenues. But what it does is that it attracts other businesses, related business that may be attracted to being located in the city of Hemet. So for instance, if you have a factory that builds something, well, those factory workers need to go somewhere to eat. And maybe those folks say, I don't want to drive an hour. I want to live within town. So it has a ripple effect of different businesses and different uses that might be attracted based on these heavier uses or main uses. So those are one of the ways that you can pull that.
The mail order point of sale.
Mhm.
For example, the point of sale order that these companies could be doing right from our city, which would be the point of sale.
Correct. Correct. And again, we can play with the definitions, but you're absolutely correct that we don't know what the new technology is going to bring. We don't know lithium ion is going to be the option in the future. It may be something different. So we try to leave it more broad in that sense so that we don't limit the future technology developments. But at the same time, you're absolutely correct. It may come to, as you said, we're going to build dogs and cats. Well, those type of business will have higher regulations than city components. So it may have the federal guidelines that they need to meet, or it may have state guidelines that they need to meet, and so on. So we can't see the future and we can't try to cover everything. But what we're trying to do is create some opportunities within the city of Hemet so that these vacant buildings or vacant lots can be utilized for something that is trending upward in the future.
One last question. Is anyone else?
Not to my knowledge. There are a couple other cities that are looking into specific items. Like battery storage is really big right now with all the electric vehicles that are coming online. Or as soon as the chip shortage disappears, then it'll come online. But that's pretty much what a lot of people are looking at. But I haven't seen too many cities go into what we're doing tonight, is providing multiple different options for vacant buildings that are just kind of sitting and have been sitting for a number of months.
Much of it is profitable, as what she was mentioning before, with the city bringing in revenue as sales tax, the 1%, or just in general bringing in revenue. Definitely have to have the incentive for people to come pick Hemet of all places to come here instead of business and what we have to offer. But I know like Zelle and Venmo and companies like that, that's just really money transferring. There isn't really much of a sales tax or what we can get off that as a profitable side for the city. But like manufacturing, like that's definitely, that will always be emerging trend, is pharmaceutical and health and food. That will always be there. And like hearing aid manufacturers, I know one of Siemens and now Signia, but they had a manufacturer in La Habra for many years, and then they closed it down due to the cost of living of just the general area of living there. And but I agree that this is something we should discuss, but what's the most profitable market for the city to take advantage of besides like the the fintechs, I don't see us making too much money on that because it's all wire transfers. But something like R&D, that's more funding. That's not necessarily, I don't think we can get too profitable on fundings, but like the pharmaceutical and things like that. I just speaking out loud, but I agree with her. We definitely need to find something that in this emerging trend that the city can benefit on the sales tax reasons so that we can make a profit on that as well.
Right, and absolutely we agree with that. It's just sometimes we have to look 2 to 3 steps beyond what we see in front of us today. And so when we're talking about financial tech industries, it's not necessarily the financial tech itself will make a tax generation, but what that business will bring into the city. So I'm not saying we will be, but Silicon Valley has certain image tied to it, even though some of the businesses don't necessarily generate anything as a product. But because the area and what it kind of stands for, people want to locate there. So then the property value goes up, residential, commercial, and everything else goes up. And a lot of people want to just live there, not because it has a good scenery or beach front, but because it's a tech base. So that's what we're trying to kind of create, is that not necessarily the first item that you see in front of you is going to generate tax revenue, but rather what that will pull from. And so it's a multiple ripple effect. And that if you have a financial tech, maybe then other banking industry will be located here. Those employees will locate here. Maybe they'll find recreational opportunities within the city limits or nearby. They may find housing. They may find their friends and families might find housing here. So all of those are tied in a big chain. So we're trying to put that main business or main component out there so that that brings and draws from multiple sources.
Buildings have been empty for not months, but years. So just to have something productive in there, opportunities for jobs and, people coming in and out of them, that's huge. So,
Is just a kind of an odd question, but is the Wuhan Laboratories a biotech company?
Yes, it would be considered a biotech company.
It'd be really important to know if you got the Wuhan lab next to you, right? I'm just, the point being is but I guess my point is that emerging technologies is just that. Emerging trends is just that. It's emerging. And like you say, we don't know what technology is going to bring a year from now, 2 years from now. On the solar or on the battery storage, there's planning, you kind of left it all open, but has there been kind of an analysis of what we think the opportunities more specific to our area are? When you look at, like I was discussing prior to the meeting, the Inland Empire Energy Center that was only open for 15 years as a gas-fired turbine peaking plant. They shut down, and now they're looking at battery storage there to store large amounts of power to the grid. They have access directly to some big transmission lines. Do we have any of that sort of opportunity here within the city in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access to large electrical systems, or are we thinking more kind of like the end use storage wall or battery walls and things of that nature, just from a planning department perspective? Sure.
Initially, when we started this, we weren't looking at how they're going to source their energy into the battery itself. What we were looking at is the storage facilities. We've been getting a lot of inquiries from industrial developers that are looking for square feet of 1 million square feet and bigger warehouses. So whether you're storing ion batteries or whether you're storing some new technology batteries, the storage facility is still needed. So whether it's a alkaline battery or a nickel cad battery, the storage facility doesn't change. So that's the opportunity we're trying to provide, is not necessarily the storage of certain type of batteries, but rather a place where they can do that.
So more of just like a logistics versus and I don't know what the word would be, not industrial, but kind of resource centered, where you're, because if we're storing energy that's connected to the grid, so like what's the word, but active batteries that are connected versus just storing a bunch of boxes of batteries for transportation in and out. Is that what you're?
Well, that was the initial thought, because we have a lot of empty vacant lands here that can be turned into warehouses and so on. But going forward, you can have different types of uses, such as we may have a company A making widgets for battery terminals only, or we may have a company B making the casings for the battery only, or we may have company C making the connectors for the batteries only. And we may have a company that just stores the finished products only. So we're trying to be a little more broad in that sense, but it will be limited to new developments rather than storing old or leakage and things of that sort. So that's the kind of the discussion that we had in planning.
A couple more questions, more on process. One of the things mentioned was streamlining the permitting process. What does that mean? We're putting these, the proposed amendment is to put these all in as a permitted use. So since they're not conditionally permitted, there would be no CUP. There'd be no public hearing.
Correct. So when you see a P within our use matrix, P means permitted use within that particular zoning. So for instance, if somebody wanted to do a battery storage in an M1 or CM zone, and if you find that there's a P, then it's a permitted type use. Then the only thing that you would go through is the building development, if it's a vacant land, or if there is already a building there, then we would just go into as a tenant improvement, which means they'll refresh the landscaping, change out the interior layout for their use, and that building will get reutilized. If it has a conditional use permit, then it would go through the process of planning commission review and approval. And that will just include some conditions, review of public hearing, opportunity for public to come out and make comments on the project. So that's the major two differences. Now, when we're talking about these items, we're already placing them into an industrial area. So the EV battery storage is going to be in M1, M2, and CM, which are all industrial areas. So for those type of uses to be in industrial is very appropriate. All we're trying to do is reduce the amount of time of planning process in order for them to be established. But the area is zoned for that type of use already.
You know, I mean, considering our last commission meeting and where we had, you know, we're kind of, as a result of a state mandate, being required to kind of bypass the public role in this. My concern is being on the leading or bleeding edge of something and not having the public have an opportunity to chime in. We're just saying kind of, we're open, and I completely agree that it's really a good idea to have be open for business and manufacturing and industry, but I certainly would be a lot more comfortable as these emerging trends are developed and they continually evolve, and we start to see more kind of the impact to the communities that they're centered in, that we have at least kind of a phasing in period of that, where we have an opportunity for the planning commission, the city council, the public to weigh in on those uses and not bypass that process. So, I mean, is there a way that we could include that? I mean, at least on the short term, and short being whatever the council would and planning would think appropriate, but to make specifically with biotech and batteries, especially considering where we're at in the last couple years, and that biotech is, the Wuhan lab is a biotech company. We sure would want to have an opportunity for the public to weigh in on something like that. Is there a way to maybe make this where we say that these emerging or these new uses are conditionally permitted versus just straight permitted, so that at least when they just to kind of, yes, we're open to it. You can definitely come in, and we're welcoming you. But we do want to know what you're planning on doing. We want we want our neighbors to be able to have some say in that.
Sure, absolutely. We could change the proposal to require a conditional use permit.
That's very, isn't that, conditional use permits can be really cumbersome for a process. Like, aren't we looking at trying to make this more streamlined so that we're saying, maybe what we could do, John, is define biotech companies within these parameters are permitted like this. Those within way out their parameters need to come in for that CUP.
Yeah, I guess but
Go in and be really, I mean, maybe definition, maybe we need to come back with some more definitions.
I guess, I mean, it's Director King, you made a comment earlier, it's not knowing what technology will be in the future, and that's very much the case. And so how we can't really define it necessarily at this point.
Well, and the other thing, to your point, I know you're trying to protect and trying to kind of stay in front of, but I think the other obstacle is we don't know what we don't know. And like if a biotech company was coming in, and I mean, at what point are we going to even know what we're allowing? I think you're trying to stay ahead of, like, oh, what if this is, dangerous, or, you know what I mean?
Well, what I want to make sure, I mean, the reason why we're here is we represent the council and our community, right? To ultimately, in my view, is to implement the general plan, right? That's kind of our guiding document, and then all the ordinances and things that are underneath it. But the public review process, it just seems like we're being pushed to forego that more and more and more and more, and take the public out of the picture. And I think that's a dangerous precedent. I had a really hard time. The last resolution was one of the toughest votes for me personally since I've been on the commission. I have a really hard time with being told that we can't look at something as our community. But at least that is, it's a known. It's high density residential has been going on a really long time. We can set up some standards. We know what we're getting, so that you can make the argument that, well, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. We can set some standards that meet the requirements, streamline the process so those developers can come in and build. But in this case, it's emerging trends. We don't know what it is, and so to just openly say, yeah, we don't even have to look at it. We don't even have to, understand what they're proposing. To me, at this point, I mean, if no other cities have done it yet, like I said, I'm all for the leading edge, but not the bleeding edge.
Well, so pardon me, is it just for the biotechs, or is it for all of it?
I think, I mean, for me personally, it's the biotech and the battery storage. Those are the two that kind of, I mean, financial, those are, and research and development. Research and development is kind of iffy. I don't know exactly what that is. I mean, that, and maybe we can have a little more discussion on. Yeah,
research
that's,
development, maybe like there's a company called like Neuralink that Elon Musk is behind, and that's just strictly research and development of brain as to how the brain can communicate and help with Alzheimer's and stuff like that. But the battery is a risk because, you know, just to charge a lithium ion battery, you have to put in a big box of sand and charge it. And if it goes off, it creates glass. It's a big risk behind that and very fire hazard in a way too. So those are the things that we also have to be concerned about is the
Mhm.
risk behind having certain things in our city that if something did happen, it can create a far bigger mess to take care of. And so I think
That's
that
the unintended consequence of something that I, I agree with you to a point. And I also would like to see us do more things that, and I don't want to say just take out the public process, but define the process so that if there is a problem with something, if they were processing and they already had this through and somebody saw that they were going to be doing bio research on brains, like you said, and it's something that could be really offensive. I get it. That could be something that I don't want next to my childcare center or something like that. So is there a way that we can be more definitive with these things that we're saying? Give some parameters and then leave room for the ability for us to say these kind of things need to go through a more stringent process. These kind of things in this category, we define well enough to where we all say, no, that's good. You go forward with that. I know it kind of encumbers these definitions, but it would give us a more clear.
and Commissioner Hill mentioned last time we had this discussion back a while ago. He mentioned his concern of one of the articles of how the cloud companies that somebody was able to hack the city through the cloud company. It was a city hack, and it put a city in from what he was saying, it put a city into a dire strait because it was a cloud company. And he said that's something he brought up to you. He says something we need to look into a little more to make sure that the city isn't going to be jeopardized by having these kind of companies here, because that's the new war is hack. The hackers, there's a new war out there. So, you know, there are dangers to everything, that emerging trends, but which one do we want?
yeah. And it's more, I guess, of a process question, you know, and not to say that we want to preclude the city of Hemet from opportunities for filling those buildings and for attracting business. I mean, you can see the development and the jobs that are coming into the city of Paris and Marina Valley with all the logistics and everything. I mean, it's certainly a value to the city, but or potentially of value. But again, it's when we're dealing with emerging trends that are so fluid and changing so rapidly and could have unintended consequences. I think it's important that we engage our community in those decisions, and not just give a blanket, all of these things are going to be accepted. So, you know, is that the same when there was another comment, approving by right? Is that that's just like a ministerial approval? What's the difference between the term by right? I heard that a little earlier.
Well, by right just means that based on the zoning, it permits it. So just kind of give you a little other thought to process. So there's, I believe it was in 2006 to 2008, maybe. There's a huge influx of cell towers that were going in all over the city, everywhere. And there's a lot of people that protest against it, and very few people came to the city saying, yes, we want it. And there was a huge argument and debate going back and forth about health questions, what we would do. And I'm not here to say one way or another, but what I'm saying is that there was those type of issues and incidents that came along for a lot of cities. And the federal government actually just stepped in based on the communications requirements for emergency that they should be allowed to go through with the aesthetics, the height, those requirements, but the actual usage of the towers themselves should be allowed. So the cities, local agents were allowed to require standards for height, location, aesthetics, but not necessarily what it does. So in this particular case, we're talking about emerging trends which are unknown. We don't know the exact contents or the impacts that we'll have in the future. All we're trying to do is create some opportunities for the city. Just have a look at the M1 and M2. M2 is the heaviest industrial zone that we have in the city. So, and I'm trying to look up some of the current uses within the M2. There are heavier uses like engine dismantling, heavier uses that are in M2 that doesn't require a conditional use permit. I'm not saying that is, but there are some uses that could be heavier use that are permitted within the M2. So we can put some restrictions based on certain zoning. Let's say in commercial manufacturing, you may require a conditional use permit, let's say for battery operation, but in an M2, it is permitted. So kind of look at the intensity and the intent of those zoning uses and not just blanket say, oh, just because it's EV, we're gonna say it all requires conditional use permit. And that may be something that you wanna go in that direction, but take a look at how the entire zoning is set up and the intensity. Most of the times when folks bring new things or something that we don't have listed, I look for, as a planner, look for most commonly related uses within our code to see if that kind of fits within that area. So if we have, say, boat motor rebuilding facility are permitted within M1. I'm just taking that as an example. But nothing is listed for, say, auto engine rebuilding. Well, those are very similar uses, even though it's not listed in there. So I would use that as a cue to say, well, it's a like and similar use within that zoning requirement. So let's follow that path in order to do that. So we have some leeways and some latitude. So if somebody comes in and says, well, what we do is we pour out the battery acid into beakers and we transfer it over, to another facility, then we're no longer looking at battery storage. We're looking at chemical dismantling. So that's what I would be looking for as part of the use. So just because it says EV battery storage doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. We have to look at how they operate. What do they do exactly in order to figure out exactly where it fits in there, in the matrix.
Yeah, so like under maintenance and repair services, you have minor maintenance installation services, tire services. Smog certification is a conditional use in the BP zone, but a permitted use in the M1, M2 zone.
Correct.
As an example. So yeah, so I mean, maybe taking maybe a combination of those two things, like Commissioner Van Arsdale was talking about, is maybe a little bit more definition of what these things are and what would kind of lend it, just like you mentioned, if it's just strictly battery here moving, just that's more logistics. We're just logistics of a hazmat kind of, it's versus taking the acid out and that's something different. So maybe a little bit more clarification on what specific would constitute permitted versus conditional, number one, and then also within the zoning themselves, what would be more sensitive to the community, so.
And I commend you for trying to do something that is streamlined. I think it's helpful and important. And when we all have our own opinions on what are good businesses, emergent technologies and all that stuff, what are good that we define. But I do agree that there are some today that might not fit into the shopping center where that used to be
Right.
my fabric store. But there, your mom's fabric store, mine. But that those, that seems like we could define it enough to where we would allow those kind of businesses that would work well and are easy pickings, low hanging fruit, but some kind of definition that gives you some control whenever something really questionable emerges, because who knows what somebody's going to create next year. Or, really the technologies move so fast that it dumbfounds all of us.
Sure. It could be Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future.
Where we're going, we don't need roads. That would be pretty impressive if we can get. They're almost there.
Well, this is off topic, but like the Tesla plant, I hope that that's still being looked at getting done. I haven't seen any action over there, but that kind of emerging technologies, how we can make it easier for them.
Oh, I thought they withdrawn.
Yes, they withdrew.
But and that wasn't because of us. Just the withdrawal wasn't because of us. So is this something then that would maybe we could bring back with a little bit more definition of them relative to what would constitute conditional versus a permitted use, and then also within the different zones?
Sure, we could bring it back for the next meeting.
And I just want to echo what Commissioner Van Arsdale said. I mean, great. It's great to be on the leading edge, and we have a lot of opportunity in our area for a lot of open space, and there's a lot of development happening all around us. We're no longer really like this offshoot way over there. We're kind of in the middle of stuff now, and so leveraging all the residential stuff that's happening, leveraging all the logistics stuff that's happening, just really close by is brilliant. And so I'm all for it. I want to just make sure that 10 years, 20 years down the road, our community is not coming back and saying, well, why in the heck did you let that go there? So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Absolutely.
So do we need a motion
Yes.
then to move that back? Are there any other comments or thoughts, or is there a motion? Actually, let me ask this. Is there a motion for approval to move this forward?
Thought we were making,
Right. I just want to make sure that,
Oh, yeah, no.
okay. Okay, great. So then I would make a motion that staff takes a look at some of the comments made during open discussion. Oh, and then also I forgot I never opened up public hearing. Me. Oops. Before I do that, I'd like to open up public hearing. And are there any comments online or e-comments submitted?
Nobody's online and no e-comments submitted.
Thank you. Close public hearing. So I'd like to move that staff take a look at some of the comments and discussion, specifically as it relates to definition of these uses and applicability to different zoning, and then bring this back to the commission at our next meeting. Is that okay? And I'll entertain a second. For October 19th. Okay, and Commissioner Van Arsdale seconded. And that motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much, Director King. Okay. Department reports.
Nothing to report from the city attorney's office.
Okay.
I don't have anything to report other than we have a work study scheduled for 6 p.m. next Thursday. We are trying to verify whether there's a violation in Brown Act if all commissioners show up at the same time. So we'll get the information to you tomorrow.
Okay. I know Commissioner Lemke, you're not going to be available. Is everyone else available to attend?
It's this Thursday, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I won't be here, so that'll help.
Available to be in person?
I'm available to be in person.
Okay. Yeah. So once then we'll have to like draw straws to see who shows up in person.
I think he was available, wanted to come too, but he's not here today. So.
Yeah, so we'll email all the commissioners and let you know whether there is or there isn't a violation of Brown Act if all of you show up. If there is, then we would have to take volunteers to commissioners. If there isn't, then all of you can attend.
In a case where it was a work study like that and we all wanted to be there, couldn't we just advertise it as a meeting? Not now because it's too short a time.
Correct.
But can't you just advertise it as a meeting and it's open?
Yeah, then it will have to be as part of the public hearing meeting. Well, it'll be part of the public hearing meeting setting for a work study. So as we did emerging trends on the last hearing or last meeting where we just kind of discussed it, but it wasn't an advertised meeting for that particular item to be made a decision, but it was advertised for that item to be discussed.
All right. Future agenda items.
So in the future, you'll see some changes in the zoning ordinance amendment for maximum building height we discussed. We have a cell tower coming in for you. They're still trying to get 5Gs in Hemet. We have a Heritage Point, which is a single family residential development. And we have a tattoo parlor coming before you for review.
Planning Commissioner reports.
Commissioner Lemke,
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Beamsterfer,
Nothing to report.
Vice Chair Van Arsdale, and Chairman Worth.
And I have nothing to report. So if there is nothing more, then we'll be adjourned until October 19th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.